We're live.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
It's earlier than it usually is when we do this. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this week's Come Follow Me lesson for the Mormon News Report podcast. My name is Jenny Noonan Dye. I am in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm joined here by my husband, John Dye. Say hello, John Dye.
Hey, everyone. How are you? Good morning today.
Again, this may be a surprise to many people. Did we even announce that we were doing this earlier today?
We did not.
Oops.
And that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
That's
so
okay.
we this morning, we've got a couple of things going on. One, we want to acknowledge my co-host Brent Malone in Detroit is not with us right now. He's getting ready for their home church that they do, and hope things are going well there. We changed the time because we've got something going on here today at home, and that's why the different time today.
Yeah, so the regularly scheduled 10 o'clock Utah time.
Yeah, 12 noon Eastern. Yeah. If you're joining at the regular time, I'm sorry, you're finding this video that was recorded earlier. We're starting a little earlier because we've got to end earlier because we've got something happening today. So thanks, everyone, for being with us. The lesson this week for Come Follow Me is, let's see, it's Alma chapters, I don't have it right in front of me, but it's 8 through 14, right?
8 through 12.
Oh, 8 through 12. Okay. 8 through 12. And the lesson is Jesus Christ will come to redeem his people. So these chapters, to me, have a lot to do with missionary work, and exactly as it says, redemption. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, it's very interesting because, Alma is a very colorful figure, right? Alma the Younger. Went through a lot of struggle himself as he tried to find his own testimony young in life, and eventually was converted. An angel visited him. We'll see that angel come back this week in this week's lesson. It's also interesting because as he's dealing with the people of Ammonihah, where he finds his missionary companion, Amulek, those are individuals who I'd say mirror his early self. Very rebellious, definitely did not have testimonies. Not only did not have testimonies, did not believe at all in many of the things that were shared from a gospel perspective. So it's interesting to note, how Alma approaches that and some of the things that he does.
Well, and I think that's actually, thank you for that, first of all. And before I forget, if you're joining us this morning, we'd love to know where you are watching from. Please go ahead and, drop a comment, tell us your name, I guess your name will come up with your comment, where you're watching from, and any thoughts or impressions you had this week for this study. John, you bring up a good point that the people that Alma ends up teaching could remind him of his younger self. And, I actually think that there's actually a gift in that. I think a lot of times, our missionaries who go out into the world through no fault of their own, they're young and in a lot of ways, in many aspects in life, kind of could be considered inexperienced.
Sure.
And I think a lot of times that can be cause for the people with whom they work, or the people that they find and teach. They may feel, what does this kid know? That they never dealt with addiction or had any of the problems that I've had. And while I'm not saying that those efforts of those missionaries are not appreciated or effective, there's also something to be said for people who have shared experiences, and that it's a gift, that it's a blessing to be able to kind of connect that way.
Yeah, I would say knowing my very naive 19-year-old self and jumping out into a culture, specifically in Taiwan, speaking a different language, there wasn't a lot that I had in common with a lot of the people we taught, if they were a little older. But I do think that not only can be something that helps, sometimes though, I think being quote unquote naive and having people see that opens up something, a connection that wouldn't be there otherwise. I think there's pros and cons on both sides for sure.
Absolutely, because that was my next point, was that that being said, you don't need to relate, to connect, or I'm sorry, you don't need to have those shared experiences in order to connect. It's not a prerequisite
Absolutely
to connect or love or serve. And you know what, I would have to, knowing what I do know, it may be kind of a refreshing thing to have, if there's someone who's dealt with and had a hard life and dealt with some heavy things, to have new missionaries come in and see them for who they are instead of what they've done, because that can be a thing. So
absolutely.
Let's go ahead and turn to the lesson. In Alma 8, it can be difficult to share the gospel and even feel like sharing the gospel when we are rejected in doing so, or when we feel like we have.
Well, let me add one other thing, if I can,
sure.
which is great, which is tying exactly into what you're saying. So after he finished in Gideon, here at the beginning, the city of Gideon, which was named after Gideon, he went to Melech, and these guys were just awesome. And so they accepted his word. Basically, he did what he had to do, and that finished quite well. Notice that there's not a lot of discussion about Melech because of how good it was. Notice that Mormon, the record keeper, is obviously just highlighting on the places where people need to change. So here it is in Melech, we get 1-2 verses talking about that. Now, when he does that, he goes back home for a little bit and he basically rests a little bit, and he went into Ammonihah. Now, Ammonihah is crazy, and maybe this is where you can take over, but Ammonihah is where he meets Almelech eventually. But man, this is a tough spot.
Yes. Well, you can keep going if you want. Excuse me. So yes, it is a tough spot, and Alma persists. He keeps going. The people there, like you mentioned, maybe Alma could relate with them and understand kind of where they were coming from because of the things that they were doing. They had hardened their hearts. And, down in, excuse me, in verse 11, it says, we know who you are, and we know, your calling. We know what you do. We know that thou art high priest over the church, which thou hast established in many parts of the land, according to your tradition. And we are not of thy church, and we do not believe in such foolish traditions, which is very like, thanks. I know who you are. Not interested.
Yep.
I don't believe that.
Yep, exactly. We know who you are. We know that you gave up the judgment seat. Basically, he was basically the first chief judge, which he conceded to Nephi so he could go out and work with people and basically do missionary work. One thing too, I think in verse 10 that is very interesting here in pink that I've put, Alma labored much in spirit, wrestling with God in mighty prayer, because Ammonihah, they did reject his words. Now, we see this a lot. Enos did the same thing, and he had great results. Now, what we're going to find with Ammonihah, spoiler alert, is these guys do not respond the same way. And eventually, when Christ comes about 82 years later, they are just rocked. I mean, the whole city is destroyed. So basically, 1 to 1.5 generations later, everyone is killed in Ammonihah. That still remains there. So he's doing what he can, laboring much in spirit, wrestling with God in mighty prayer. But there are, this doesn't end up the way that he would have preferred. However, some good things come out of Ammonihah. He gets kicked out, or basically he leaves.
I think it's interesting too, because not only, just real quick, did they say, we know who you are, we're not into it. And then also they go on to say, like, and we know that because we don't believe it, that you don't have any power over us.
Yeah.
You don't have any say. It's like, you're not the boss of us.
Exactly.
And I was like, yikes. Like, just twist that knife.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what they're saying. It's like, if you were chief judge, we'd have to listen to you because that's the laws of the land.
Right.
Laws of the church, separation of church and state, they saw it here as well. And they thought, this is like President Nelson going in and telling people what to do. And they'd say, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Who are you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you want to, or is that all?
Oh, well, it just, he withstood all that, but they spit upon him, caused that he should be cast out of their city. And I'm sure this wasn't a gentle push and nudge outside the city. This is like, get out, stay out. Mm-hmm. This is probably like Samuel the Lamanite, in 3rd Nephi, as we get toward there, as we talk more about him. This is like, get out and stay out. Mm-hmm. And so he takes off. He was weighed down with sorrow. He had just a lot. He was going through, I don't think we can underestimate or overestimate maybe what he was going through, but he was weighed down with sorrow. And guess what? Here comes the angel. Yeah.
So in verse 15, and this is where, when we talk about being discouraged in any missionary work efforts that we do, this is a verse that perhaps where we can find some comfort. Alma Chapter 8, verse 15 reads, "Blessed art thou, Alma. Therefore lift up thy head and rejoice, for thou hast great cause to rejoice. Thou hast been faithful in keeping the commandments of God from the time which thou receivest thy first message from him. Behold, I am he that delivered it unto you." And I mean, how would you find comfort in that, in reading that, if maybe you were finding some discouragement? For me, I would say that that it's encouraging to hear and understand that even being faithful, even having faith in and of itself, is a blessing.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's very right. I think one other thing that is extremely interesting in this point, same angel. Mm-hmm. The angel first came to Alma and the sons of Mosiah when he told them, you've got to change, you've got to pivot, you've got to do things differently. Yeah. He comes again, this time, even I would say that first time it was meant to encourage. I mean, it was literally kind of fire and brimstone encourage, right? Change and this time he's coming back and he's saying, you still need to change. You need to go back. And what Alma did not do is say, man, I tried. This is the Nephi 3:7 type verse. I'll go and do what I'm commanded. He didn't say, gosh, I tried and it just didn't work. Didn't work out for me. Can't you send somebody else? Isn't there somebody else that's either there? Because we find out Amulek is there. Isn't there somebody else that you could take to that city and have them do what needs to be done? He didn't do that. He was like, and I believe it says, and we'll go back to the scripture, he straightway went back to the city. He didn't take any time to rest. I mean, these guys just were spitting on him, again, helping him exit the city in a not kind way, I'm sure. He just takes off. But so the angel comes back to Alma and, I think encourages him to change, this time not for himself so much, although he did have to change maybe his attitude after he gets spit on, but really for the city, right? Yeah. He wanted to make sure that the people of the city of Ammonihah had been given a chance. And he knew quite honestly that Alma and Amulek had to find one another. Yes. And we find that the angel visited Amulek as well. Right. And the verse you were referring to before is verse 18, or what you said is it can be found in verse 18. It came to pass after Alma had received the message from the angel of the Lord, he returned speedily to the land of Ammonihah, and he went in a different way. So he entered from the south the second time. And Can I spend one moment there too?
You sure may.
I'm sorry, I'm talking so much.
Please, I like it.
He entered in through a different way. Doesn't that show us sometimes when we try missionary work and it doesn't work, it may be because of us and our method. This is talking literally, not figuratively, at least in this verse, but sometimes when we try things, it doesn't work. What do we learn? Some people, if you go in through the front door with missionary work, it'll work. Others, you have to go in through the back way, the south side of the city.
Thanks. Yeah. I just want to share this. This is from Elder Holland, actually, about being courageous. He said this to give encouragement to those who are mistreated for sharing or defending the gospel. And this was in 2014, I believe. Yeah, the cost and blessings of discipleship. If you haven't already, you'll one day find yourself called upon to defend your faith simply because you are a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Such moments will require both courage and courtesy on your part. You may wonder if it is worth it to take a courageous moral stand in high school or to go on a mission only to have your most cherished beliefs reviled, or to strive against much in society that sometimes ridicules a life of religious devotion. Yes, it is worth it. Friends, especially my young friends, take heart. Pure Christ-like love flowing from true righteousness can change the world. Be strong. Live the gospel faithfully, even if others around you don't live it at all. Defend your beliefs with courtesy and with compassion, but defend them. And I love that line. I remember when he said that.
Yeah.
And it was just a very uplifting, direct, and encouraging way to go. Defend your beliefs with courtesy and compassion, but defend them. I just want to address some comments here and say hello, Barbara, Dave, Eduardo, Jen. Hello, everyone. Barbara asks, good morning from Orem. Have we changed to a new time? Excellent question. Just today. We had something come up. We've got something going on later today at the normal time. Normally, we do this discussion at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, which is 12 noon Eastern, and also typically Brant Malone, my co-host in Detroit, Michigan, is joining us. Both those things are not happening today. Today it's John and me in Salt Lake City, and we are meeting early and actually may be cut a little short, depending, because we've got something starting very soon. Dave says, good morning from Washington, D.C. It is so amazing that when I'm weighed down, the Lord prepares an Amulek to buoy me up and provide support at just the right time. You're right, Dave. I mean, we've been kind of discussing Amulek as Alma's mission companion, but you're right. It's also that he was an answer to Alma's prayers. And,
Absolutely.
And often we find that our prayers are answered through other people. And that's one reason why it's important to be in tune with the Spirit, so that we can put ourselves in a position to be an answer to prayers for someone else and bless their lives, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I do want to talk about the importance of, it's interesting. So our daughter served a mission in Canada, and she just returned home last December, and they partway through her mission, she got a new mission president who kind of refocused the work that the full-time missionaries were doing, in that the missionaries were encouraged to work with the church members. The story of Alma and Amulek demonstrates the importance of members' efforts in missionary work. So, and of course, there's always the funny story in Provo at the Missionary Training Center across the street. There's a huge field that is also right in front of the Provo Temple, and that field is owned by the MTC, and that's for missionaries on their recreation days,
right.
To go,
P-Day?
Yes, and to have fun and get some exercise when it's appropriate. And it's always told they had a problem for a while with just anyone going there to use it as kind of a park, and so there was a sign posted that said for missionary use only, and then someone else went up and put another sign under it that said every member a missionary.
Oh, got it.
Womp womp.
Every member a missionary.
the relationship between local members and full-time missionaries. If we look at Alma chapter 10, verses 1 through 12, I'll give you a minute to go there.
Alma 10, 1 through 12.
Or we can go back a minute because we were talking about Alma going back into the city. And when he did, basically he came across Amulek, yeah. And he's like, hey, I'm hungry.
Yeah. He's kind of this transient guy coming in, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, if we go back to Alma 8, I jumped ahead
Here
there.
it is,
When he got to the city, he was hungry. So he went to a man and he said, I'm a servant of God, and give me something to eat. And the man said, yeah, I know who you are. I'm a Nephite. I know you're a prophet. I know what's happened to you. So please, I'd be honored, come to my house and I'll give you some food. And that's where they start to.
That's where they
over a good meal, right?
Started to happen. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then he introduces himself and says, I'm a high priest. After that happens, Alma says to Amulek, I'm a high priest over the church throughout the land. I've been called to preach the word. I've been called to do this missionary work. I came before and they wouldn't have anything to do with me. So, and then I got kicked out. But he said, thank you so much for helping me, because I've not had luck otherwise in this city. And so he hung out with him. He, stayed with him.
Yeah. Many days, it says.
A long time.
Who knows what that means? I mean, it still shows 82 BC in the chapter headings for 8 and 9. So it wasn't a year, but chances are he needed to rest and recoup, right? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he had been through a lot. Who knows what it means when they actually did, kick him out, like get out and stay out. If he mentions that he had been fasting, and that, contributed to his physical weakness, his hunger.
Sure.
For sure. But yeah, you're right. Maybe he had wounds or injuries or something, but either way, it was something where that's how they got to know each other.
Yeah.
Good morning. Watching from the Philippines. Hello. Glad that you're here. So then they again, back to the importance of the full-time missionaries working with the members. If you go to Alma 10, verses 1 through 12, excuse me, this is when Amulek preaches to the people. And, in verse 1 in verse 2 and 3, he kind of gives his genealogy, which we see frequently in the scriptures. I think it's
sure.
To establish who you are. Like, just whether it's, if people don't know, or like, who is this guy,
yeah,
kind of identifying yourself with authority,
make sure people know who you are. Yep.
And also says that in 4, I'm also a man of no small reputation among all those who know me.
It's like, don't you know who I am?
This is a total don't you know who I am. And behold, I have many kindreds and friends, and also have acquired much riches by the hand of my industry. Okie doke. But then in 5, he says, nevertheless, after all this, I never have known much of the ways of the Lord and his mysteries and marvelous power. I said I never had known much of these things, but behold, I mistake, for I have seen much of his mysteries and his marvelous power, yea, even in the preservation of the lives of this people. Nevertheless, I did harden my heart, for I was called many times, and I would not hear. Therefore, I knew concerning these things, yet I would not know. Therefore, I went on rebelling against God in the wickedness of my heart, even until the 4th day of this 7th month, which is in the 10th year of the reign of the judges. As I was journeying to see...
What day is that, by the way?
I'm sorry? The 4th of July?
The 4th of July.
Probably not the same calendar, but that's an excellent point.
This predates the founding of the United States of America, though.
But that's incredible. Very good. As I was journeying to see a very near kindred, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared unto me and said, Amulek, return to thine own house, for thou shalt feed a prophet of the Lord. Yea, a holy man who is chosen of God, for he has fasted many days because of the sins of this people, and he is an hungered. And thou shalt receive him into thy house and feed him, and he shall bless thee. and thy house, and the blessing of the Lord shall rest upon thee and thy house. And it came to pass that I obeyed the voice of the angel and returned towards my house. And then in verse 9, and the angel said unto me, he's a holy man. So he what he does is he goes to his people. He says, listen, I do not have a religious background. And there were many times in my life when I was like, or throughout my whole life, I was like, no, I'm not a man of God. But let me tell you about this experience I had. And then in verse 12, and now when Amulek had spoken these words to the people began to be astonished, seeing there was more than one witness who testified of the things whereof they were accused, and also of the things which were to come, according to the spirit of the prophecy which was in them. So essentially, we see here, like they hear the message from somebody who's like, look, I'm not from the outside. I'm one of you.
Yep.
So, and that's
yeah. That, and I think that added not only the personalization that they needed. It's like this guy, they probably knew him because he had grown up there. He was a man of business. He goes through his genealogy, like you said.
Right.
I think that's important because it's like, hey, this is who I am, and I'm not one that's easy to be duped, right? I'm a man of not small reputation here. And, that I remember on my mission, this is when I wrote, specifically when Alma testifies first to the people, Amulek comes up behind in some of these verses that we're reading. And he talks specifically about what Alma did and reinforces that. And that's why we learn the true power of multiple witnesses.
Right.
Right? Alma, yeah, we know you were the chief judge, and we know you gave that up to become, to be the person over the church. And with that, you are who you are. Well, Amulek, you're one of us. That's important. So how are we doing time-wise? I know you have to go soon.
I've actually got to step away. Do you want to wrap it up, or?
Maybe I will.
Okay.
Maybe I will. So guys, there's just a few more chapters. Maybe we'll stay there. Bye, Jenny.
Thanks, everyone. Real quick, I'm going to have John wrap up while I do this, and I've got to step away. But don't forget about next week's lesson. Thank you.
Now it's Father's Day. Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll talk to Brent.
Yeah, we'll talk to Brent. We'll let you know. But yeah.
All right, guys. We'll finish this thing up a little bit. Talk to you about some of the other things that are happening. So again, Alma 10. You'll notice here that the video that was playing, that's Zeezrom, and we'll spend a little bit more time there as we talk about Zeezrom. But in essence, they just start talking to the people, testifying to the people, doing some things that, help them understand the importance of believing and doing all that needs to happen there. So again, we're in chapter 10, and this is when they start talking about unrighteous lawyers and judges lay the foundation for the destruction of the people. And that's pretty important because, again, Zeezrom is one man that came out. He was one of the chief among them, and he began to accuse Amulek and Alma of some things that they were doing wrong in his eyes. And of course, his desire was to get gain. They talk about lawyers and poor lawyers. They can't, jokes are made about them. Even in the Book of Mormon, we revile against some of the stuff that they try to do because oftentimes they will try to utilize the law to get personal gain. And again, we start seeing this with Zeezrom specifically. So as we go into chapter 11, this is where the Nephite monetary system is set forth, and I'll let you read through that because as we talk about all the different things and what they equal, and it's double this and half of that. That's important for you guys to understand if you're interested in what was offered by Zeezrom, because that's where he offered him a lot of money to deny Christ, basically, is where that ends up. But we won't spend a lot of time there. But then Zeezrom started to question Amulek, and he said, I will give you 6 onties of silver if thou will deny the existence of a supreme being. Again, that is not a little money. That's a lot of money. And even though Amulek had a lot of money, that was a lot of money. And basically, Amulek goes against him and calls him a child of hell and does some things that most people wouldn't find too complimentary. But from there, just as we try to finish up, we'll talk more about Zeezrom, because he becomes a person that eventually becomes a strong proponent of the church. And what really changes him, we'll read here in the chapter heading of chapter 12, is that Alma and Amulek walk through the plan of salvation, and they testify of it. And they talk about men being judged by their thoughts, beliefs, words, and works. They talk about spiritual death and all of these things. And this really changes Zeezrom. He starts to think, oh my goodness, what have I done? And when that is done, that really causes him to think through some of the things. And actually, he basically goes into a coma or a stupor, very similar, I would think, to what, Alma, when he first was visited by the angel, what happened to him. And he became a believer. Now, after he became a believer, he was not only a believer, but a strong proponent of the church, and multiple times helped Alma and Amulek in multiple different ways with all that they had. So anyway, a great story, and we'll continue this next time we meet as we talk about Zeezrom and about the importance of all that Alma and Amulek and Zeezrom were doing. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Great lesson. These chapters have a lot of good doctrine, a lot of good teachings that we all can learn from. So wishing you all the best and signing out until we meet again. Thank you so much.